I know how to produce a great amount in order to give myself a sense of meaning. But there is no care for myself in that. I am driven by my own inadequacy. Now, Moshe is very clear. Neurosis is the greatest advantage we have as human beings. Almost all invention comes out of neurosis. Yeah? But it's not the same as knowing how it is to care for myself. That question finally dawned on me. It's almost 40 years of practice in myself to begin to understand what it means to care for myself. He says, if you take these lessons as exercises, the benefits of the lesson will be gone in 5 minutes. If you understand the nature of the process that we're going through, it'll be with you for a lifetime. Yeah? He's at the end of the first year, he's sitting there with a sheath of papers. And the students have asked all these academic questions. And Moshe says to them, I would like to answer your questions, but I cannot. Because I am not teaching you from the paradigm that these questions come from. Because I'm not teaching you to get the answers in such a way that you can produce something. And the people were screaming at Moshe that they wasn't teaching in a way that they benefited from. So that they would have the answers to know what to do with someone with a knee pain or back pain, or how to help someone with a crook in their neck or whatever. Because they wanted to have something to give themselves a sense of meaning. And Moshe's absolutely, no, that's not what I'm here for. Yeah? There's some other quality that's within this work that invites us to find something within ourselves, an ability within ourselves, that means so that we can utilize this great capacity in our forebrain, which is to be in the world of invention, curiosity, imagination, synthesis, spontaneity, yeah? So that we can actually grow and flourish and express something within ourselves that isn't what was conditioned into us.
And that's rather than going back into our sense of needing safety through getting answers.
Otherwise, we're going to go back to the loop, right? And you have to volitionally choose the loop of curiosity through the forebrain, the attention into the curiosity and the questions, rather than the loop. And the loop is clear. I'm going to go back to what gives me a sense of safety, the way I know myself. That's an absolutely clear sensation. It's a tactile sensation. And it comes up as fast as that.
Like you said before, we need a sense of safety going into the new thing.
That's why
retain it.
Yeah, we have to. That's why the class has to be such that you can actually make these discernments in such a way that you have within yourself a sense that, yes, it's safe for me to be in this new quality for myself long enough so I don't have to reject it immediately. Yeah, that's why I hope that the explorations that we're going through will give you the chance to go back and forth between what's old and what's new, and to open and find out, wow, I never thought of this. Maybe this exploration, oh, this is okay. This gives me a chance to notice this and this. I'm practicing the method in such a way that I'm learning how to practice my own practice of myself in the method. And so the questions that are being asked, as they're being asked, in the way that they're being asked, in the way that the principles and the Weber-Fechner and the different qualities are being given, so that you can utilize these tendencies and these practices in such a way that, oh, this is useful. Because otherwise I'm going to go, now again, incredibly brilliant lessons have been given this way. Yeah? But the question is did the practitioner practice from within themselves their own refinement? Have they come to the place where the practice has led them to a change in their behavior, which is to be profoundly caring of themselves? I chose, rather than writing on the paper that to release something, my choice is to spend the next year in profound silence, releasing nothing. Yeah. Opening to some spontaneous whole quality within myself that serves whatever it serves. Yeah? I don't care to be driven by my well-known, deeply, deeply intact, well-ingrained neurotic tendencies. I'm happy to utilize the will in myself in such a way that I hope that I can use my mind in a better way, not just have my mind run its loops. Yeah? Moshe was clear. Thinking that does not lead to a change in action is nothing other than mental masturbation. Yeah? Okay, end of rant. Here endeth this lesson. I hope that was useful for you guys. I mean, this is, we're studying such a profound work. It deserves to be recognized in relationship to all of the other work that is in this world for the human transformation or the human transcendence process. And for me, the question is my little practice of here, noticing the difference between this and this, that gives me that moment is Viktor Frankl called the moment between stimulus and response, to choose my way of entering into the relationship I have with the person. Whether I'm entering into it to produce a result in order to give myself a sense of well-being, or whether I'm entering into it to produce a result or to change them so that I can have a sense that I've been effective, or am I entering into this so that we have a dialogue that grows spontaneously? It's not a safe place to be for this paradigm, for this person that's been deeply, deeply entranced. It's not a safe place. But the wonders of the artist vision and the creativity is pretty nice. What did we do? Just, oh my God. All right. So let me just get on the floor for a moment so you can see something. I don't need a mat. These kind of things I can do. I'm sorry that I can't teach every ATM for you that would show you these things, but for the time being, see, we've been playing with movements that have to do with lifting myself away from the ground, these movements that come from in such a way that I don't increase the weight of my foot, and finding something, because you see, as soon as you look at where my leg is now and you see the force, that's going to be heavier in this joint here, isn't it? Than if I have my foot and my leg coming into me, and then you can see the lightness with which the movement comes. Yeah? And you can see that I have to have my foot on the floor in a precise and specific way for that to happen. Because if I come in here a little bit, I don't have the same support here. Who was it that I pressed down the other day? Yes. So that you could see that she didn't have that very clear ability to lift through. Now, I don't know, did you guys ever do these movements? No? You've never done these kinds of carp jumping lessons? No, you haven't done them yet? So there's a whole series of lessons that have to do with raising and lifting up and then landing, right? Some groups have, some groups haven't, right? Now, the idea of this movement is to land in such a way that when I land in such a way that I'm lifting myself rather than landing in such a way that I'm falling. So that I'm plopping down and making a sound. The quietness of it becomes more and more light. It's like I'm lifting myself away from the ground. Now, the moment I've lifted myself away from the ground, where are my legs and where did I land on my feet? There's no way I can make that movement and put my legs together like that. You hear the difference in the sound. Right? So implicit within the movement, where it's never explained, is that I must land in such a way that my skeleton provides me with the ability to be organized, to be up and through myself. Yeah? So now, go ahead, come, sit, do what you want. The whole movement is lifting up and through. My back lifting up, my legs lifting up through, the force coming here, the force coming from here up. So I'm okay, yeah? And I'm in a place where I can trust that I can continue to find a finer and finer and finer point of support for myself, which elicits for myself all of the pattern of being able to lift myself away from the floor, from the way I find my feet. Anybody who wants to try that for a moment, you can lie. You can even come to the place where you can lift your feet just a quarter of an inch and find out whether you can land with yourself, with your pelvis above the ground before your feet hit. You can try it. Now, I would love to have taught the lesson to you, but we don't have the time to do that right now. So there's a difference between landing with your feet and then lifting your pelvis, as opposed to landing in such a way that your feet touch the ground before your pelvis. And it's not driving. It's almost as if your intention is to land in such a way that you don't bang your feet against the ground. The arch in your back makes it so that your feet come to the ground quietly. That's it. Okay. So we get some ideas. All right? All right. All right, I think this is actually my leg, so I will take this one and use it for a moment. Oops. All right. Come around, please. Let me have, no, I want the stool, wooden stool, and I can sit on one of the other ones. That'll work. Perfect, right here, this will work. Well, I can use that stool. I'll use both stools, perfect. All right, so let me ask you, because this is something that we'll need for tomorrow anyway. Let me ask you, your heel points towards which toe? Which, huh?
Both metatarsals.
You've been listening to my stuff. And I've said it over and over again. But in your own experience, where do you think your heel points towards? Is the heel off center, or is it directly in the middle? Is it on the inside? Is it on the outside? Where is it? When you feel your footprint in the sand, it points right. Yes. Yes. And so how many of you have footbeds in your shoes? Orthotics. Aussies don't have orthotics. Everybody in the United States has orthotics. It's a big business. Yeah. It's a big deal here too, right? And so what do they try to do with these orthotics? What do they try to do? They try to lift the medial or the inside arch. Why do they want to lift the inside arch? Come on, you need to be closer so we can look at this. Okay. All right. So this is all in preparation for us to be able to make movements of pressing through a person's skeleton. So we have some ideas as to where we'll place our hands and for what reason. Okay, so when we look really carefully, now, of course, you look at different skeletons, they have different sort of propensities because they're taken from different models. But you can see that for the most part, the heel comes through the cuboid and points toward the fourth toe. Yeah? And this is called the longitudinal arch, the long arch. It's not the medial arch. You have three arches. Yeah? So you have the medial arch, the longitudinal arch, and you have the transverse arch. Yeah? And there's a relationship between these arches. Now, this bone here, fancy name, cuboid, but more importantly is to look at what does the cuboid do? You look really carefully at this bone, and there's two other legs, but in time you can start to look at this. But the cuboid and the shape of it, you watch, this cuboid turns up and under the most middle part of the foot. Yeah? In other words, this cuboid is in a sense, the keystone to the whole foot. Yeah? Okay, so the cuboid, when it turns up under, if we look at this from the top, it turns up under these bones. And it's going to be important for us to see that these two bones form a solid sort of back to the foot. So that the outer bones, the big toe and the outer two bones are relatively free, but this is stiffer, whatever word you want to say. Okay, so the cuboid turns up and under, and this is the foundation for the foot. And it really is a question for us as to how we learn to utilize this part of our foot if we're going to be able to lift ourselves in the world. These two bones, the cuboid relates directly to the outer two bones and to the heel. Yeah? And the outer two bones and the heel, functionally, if I have to lift a heavy weight, do I want to be on my toes or do I want to have my heel in the floor? Now, if you go to any CrossFit gym, they'll tell you, press your heel into the ground before you start to lift. Again, I can't think of a sillier message. Right? Now, so I'm going to press myself in one way if I'm going to go lifting the other way. I don't understand it, but that's okay. I'm just me, okay? But obviously, if I'm going to lift a heavy weight, I'm going to lift a bar with weight. Am I going to be there? No. Am I going to be on my toes? We certainly hope not. Where am I going to be? I have to have some kind of relationship because the heel is, as I'm coming up and through myself, the question is how do I organize myself to come up and through myself? This is a relatively small surface area, isn't it? I need to have an outrigger. There's my outrigger. I begin to make my base bigger from this point out to this point. Yes? Now I also have the third point. The question is how important are the different points? And what do I mean by that? Because how do I organize myself that as I make this movement, say for example, in lifting something, how do I make the movement of unfolding myself as we did the first day, the unfolding of myself from here to here so that I can lift my tail. Did I go there to lift my tail? I found that in order to do this, I keep finding myself moving more and more towards my heel, and I find myself lifting up and through myself so I can make the movement. This is not lifting up and through myself. Did I just fall? I fell. Is this lifting through myself? Yes. So there must be some very specific skeletal organization that provides me the ability for my musculature to contract in such a way that it lifts me away from the ground. Yeah? All right, so this could be considered to be the foundation for my foot. If I were to make a movement from my heel out to the fourth toe, and then very slowly begin to have the sense that my big toe's on the ground, my whole foot becomes a lever. And when it's a lever, then as I begin to have the process by which I go into the ground to move forward, now obviously, again, this is a whole series of ATMs about this. The question is whether I lift my foot over my toes or whether I actually have the sensation that I take my toes underneath myself to go up on my tiptoes. Another question, yeah? So now, but as I make this movement, my foot becomes a lever, and as it becomes a lever, then the lever makes it so that I can transmit force through my skeleton up and through me. What, again, is the most efficient way possible for me to transmit force? Now, if I'm here and I begin to take my step, and we watch, I take my step, and what happens is that partway through my step goes from my heel to the first toe. So now I make the step, and the force is now going across me rather than out, around, and through in a lever. So now at that moment, anybody do that? Yeah. Well, let's just wait for a moment on that, okay? Yeah, I mean, obviously, but it's still a question of the timing of it. Yeah. For example, everybody stand up for a moment. So just for the moment, the very first day, what did we do? We did some funny thing of tilting forward a little bit. So you begin to tilt forward, just tilt your whole self forward, and as you tilt forward, you pay attention to what happens to your toes. How soon do your toes begin to contract as you tilt forward? No, not that way. Just simply take the whole of yourself and just tilt forward a little bit. Just tilt forward. Just tilt forward. Just a little bit. Not bend, not bending. And all we're asking for is as you tilt forward, how long does it take before your toes start to grab the ground to keep you from falling? A few degrees, isn't it? Yeah? Now, if you were to, just for a moment, imagine that your heel is glued to the ground. And as you tilt forward, you keep your heel glued to the ground as you come forward. And so you still tilt, but you do something different. Instead of making yourself go forward over the talus, you actually have the sense that the talus goes back and under. What happens to your foot? It splays. The toes, then something happens. Now, from there, go up on your tiptoes. And see where is it that you initiate the movement on your feet to find your tiptoes. Is it on the first toe? Is it on the fourth toe? Where's the clearest point that you fall upward from? Fourth toe. And then as you go higher and higher, you begin to move closer and closer toward the first toe. And the space becomes narrower and narrower. And as you become narrower and narrower, your whole sense of how you find what the midline is to be higher and higher, so you can go higher and higher, must mean that you find some way to go to bring everything. If you're going to go higher and higher and higher and higher, so are you going to lift your head back? Are you going to lift your head forward? Where's the crown of your head and where does the movement come? Any ballet dancers here? No ballerinas? No one was? Zoran! You've done point work. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. So just slowly go up. What? I don't care. Yeah. So now you watch as she goes higher and higher. She will make herself narrower and narrower. Her head will go back, and she'll keep finding how to align her center axis over this tiny, tiny little point that she's on. So she keeps finding how to narrow her center of gravity over the point that she's on. Yeah? Yeah? You fall upward, exactly. As opposed to press yourself up. Yeah? Beautiful. Okay. You can sit back down again. So you, again, notice the difference. And gradually as we make the movement, and if we were to learn to walk and to spend time with this, we would see the transition of the movement from the heel to the fourth and across, and once everything's organized, and at what point in time in walking do we move? Again, a perspective, but Moshe says in walking we find the head of the fourth metatarsal. How far in the movement in walking do we have to go before the fourth of the head of the fourth metatarsal? As I'm walking, as I'm coming away from the ground, how long? Where's the fourth? Where's the fourth? Where's the fourth? Now watch. There's the first. What happened? Did I fall? Did I fall? Yeah, you come here. Sit here. Give me your hand. So as I'm taking a step, and I go to the first prematurely, did I fall? Until this leg becomes weightless. The tone here becomes such that I can finally support this leg being weightless.
How's the weight distributed on your other foot at that point in time?
It's distributed on the other foot in such a way, go ahead, you're fine, in such a way that when I finish standing on this foot, wait. That when I come and I finish standing on this foot, that if she pushes on me, that my heel is still generating force through myself, right? Because if I step here, now she has me. I'm not standing on my foot until I can stand and take. Now I'm standing over my foot. Now I'm not standing on my foot. So I'm distributing the force in such a way that my heel is organized, my foot is wide, and I'm in a position where I'm up and through myself and the next step is available. A perspective. Because if you ask the question, how can I go from one step to the next without falling, without coming off the top of it?
Without gripping with your toes.
Why would I? That's a great question. So if I'm studying myself in the grocery store with my shopping cart, and I go along here and I find myself, shit, my toes are gripping. How did that happen? I make the movement in the first moment. I'm coming forward and my toes are gripping. What had to happen that I had to find another whole point that my foot became available without gripping?
Is it that you shift your center, or your weight is shifted a little bit forward? I guess forward from your base of support? Right now it really is. I'm just letting. I could be here for years with you. I'm posing questions. Yeah. How can I make the transition from one point to the other in such a way that my system doesn't have to grab to keep me from falling? How will I study that? What will I use as the basis to study? Now, you have the idea already that your toes gripping gives you the sense that you're already beginning to fall. Yeah? Now, how will you then notice the beginning of the gripping? And in what way will you then say, is it possible for me to make the transition from one point to the next without gripping? Yeah? Yeah. So I'm sorry. I might be tired at this point. All right. If I make the transition across myself early, what happens to the distance between here and here? It lengthens. If it lengthens, what does it mean? What happens if this was a trampoline? What would happen? I'm settling, aren't I? If I'm going down, doesn't my system of its very nature have to catch me to keep me from falling further? Yeah? My system we already know that if I give her that, easy. If I just give her that little push, she's going to come back. We know that it's implicit in our nervous system to orient itself. And it will do everything it can to maintain being upright in gravity. Yeah? So anything that's a perturbation to that will in fact require me to stabilize myself. And in that stabilization, I'm going to then end up using my phasic, my voluntary musculature, to provide that stabilization, which means I end up utilizing parasitic action. Action that's musculature tone that's not necessary for the efficient movement, but is necessary because it's the best way I have. Until I discern the difference, I will only be able to do what I've known in the past. I can't not do it. Yeah? So then this is the question. How do I find for myself the simplest tone so that from the tone that I can make the movement in the simplest way possible so that if I make new movements then the movements have a sense of accuracy in them that they wouldn't if I simply did what I know how to do. Yeah? For us, it's a question of when I begin to touch someone, how will I place my hand on a person's foot? Because I can give them all kinds of funny messages, which we'll look at tomorrow. What time is it now? 3:29. I have another minute. Okay. So, this joint is a gliding joint. This joint is meant, it's not as many people think of, it's not just rotating around an axis. When you look at the skeletons, many skeletons, you would see that this just simply has a way of rotating. But if we look at the person who's done ballet, let's watch her again. Come on, come to stand. Roll your pants up. Now watch this part of her foot as she goes up onto her toes. Look how far this comes forwards. How far did that come forward? It came forward because the talus was capable of gliding. It's gliding forward and it's gliding back. And so when you learn to start looking at the shapes of the joints will tell you what the possibility for that joint is. Yeah? So we can start to see that this whole ability. Now, the other way would be that if I was a springboard diver or a platform diver and I would make this movement, then I would have to glide the other way, wouldn't I? Yeah? So I have this whole capacity to make this movement of this joint gliding. But what's important about this joint is, and there's a big question is, which joint in the body has the highest number of proprioceptive mechanoreceptors in it? So there's a big question. Was it the hip joint or is it the ankle joint? Yeah? Now, in any case, how does proprioception work? How do mechanoreceptors work? Little neurological. We're nerve endings that basically tell me where I am, if I start to move, the direction that I start to move, and if I change direction.
It's part of my three-dimensional feedback for myself relative to all of the muscle spindle fibers, the Golgi tendon responses, relative to the vestibular system, relative to the ocular system, relative to all the sound system, the way that I echolocate and locate myself using sound, because that's a part of my location abilities, all the abilities that I use to locate myself in space. But probably the most densely occupied is the ankle joint. So that as I begin to make these movements, I begin to have a sense of where I am in space. The ability for this joint to glide is really, really important for us. And the way that we place our hands on someone's foot and the things that we're going to do, okay? Now, I will add to this tomorrow, more elements of this, yeah? Because they'll come up, but right now I'm going blind and I can't think of the rest of the things I want to say, yeah? I would love to have had a month with you to go through some of these things. And it's just the nature of trainings. No, I can't. I mean, I have lots of other materials. You guys can, if you want, you can go and play with them and you can have them for yourself. But in general, the whole question of how do I organize myself so that my foot is organized in such a way that the arches, the middle arch, has its own keystone, the navicular, the way that it forms, rests on top of the long arch, the way that this foot forms and creates a lever so that it can take the pressure. So when my foot is solid relative to the ground, I'm not falling into the ground. That when I make a muscular action, the action moves me so that I'm efficient in the action. I don't have to bounce and then recover and then try to come up. The more specific I am in the way that I touch the ground and the way that the ground then provides me the ground force so that when I make the movement comes through me. That's what you see when you see a leaper. Someone who's a great runner, someone who's surprising in their ability to get off the ground when they're jumping. Or in my case, I happen to have a bobcat that walks through my yard once a month. Now a bobcat is about the size of a golden retriever. So it's a bobcat. So it's a really, really big cat. It's not a cougar, it's not a mountain lion, and it's certainly not a leopard. But it's certainly a hell of a lot bigger than most house cats. Right? Well, in the springtime, in my neighborhood, the rabbits come out. And I had a bobcat go through my yard the other day with a rabbit in its mouth. It was so proud of himself. Look at me. Oh, yeah. And my kids have seen them catch bobcats in the backyard. The bobcats catching rabbits and the way they play with them, right? So there's rabbits and there's all kinds of squirrels and all kinds of things. There's baby deers. I live on a green space, and the green space actually hooks to the Cascade Mountains, so you can see the green space from my house, which is right in the middle of a major suburb, but there's a green trail that goes all the way out into the mountains. I have bears in my yard, I have deers in my yard, Okay, so now when you see a bobcat, you never see a bobcat, or any cat, really, pushing against the ground. It's like they're continually coming away. Of course, the ground force is there, but they're relying on their ability to lift away. Yeah? And we're looking for the ability to lift away. So if my first step, I make a step, which is why, again, do I push against the ground? If I make a step and I make my step and I fall that much, now I have to recover it to come away again, don't I? If I'm going to get tall. Or can I just be such a way that I just come over my skeleton? Now, these are the questions. And how do I find the relationship between what's behind, what's in front of me? These are the questions. For us to understand function, if we're going to study function, then we might have to ask these questions. And then how? How do I make the transition from one foot to the next? Now, I said, didn't I? I'm in the world of gravity. When am I in the world of ground force? How do I find the organization of myself in such a way that I have lightness? Yeah? Yeah? Lightness. Okay. I'm sure that there's more, but tomorrow we'll take what we've started to see here as to how we'll touch someone's foot to provide movement into the third plane. We've had the plane up and down, we've had the plane right and left, now we have to have the plane to go forward and backwards. Yeah? But we're not going to do it blindly, we're going to actually ask again, how am I going to do this in such a way that it imparts something useful to the person so that they, when they sense themselves, they're going to find a skeleton for themselves underneath themselves in a different way. Goodbye.
Students will be staying here, and the lessons will be back in this room.
And I've listened today? Okay. Just checking. All right. See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.